Ari Lewis Show.
Welcome, everybody, to today's episode of the Ari Lewis Show here on IsraelSportsNewsRadio.com. Thank you for joining us. At any time, you can email the show at arilewishow@hotmail.com, or you can email the station at IsraelSportsNewsRadio@gmail.com. You know, folks, I've interviewed a lot of people, but my next guest is truly the jack of all trades. He's an author, Knesset member, radio talk show host, sports fan, just an all-around good guy. On the line right now, my friend Dov Lipman. Mr. Lipman, how you doing out there?
Thank you, Ari. It's good to be here with you.
Yes, indeed. Now, there are pictures all over the internet of you with Yankee great Mariano Rivera. Tell us a bit about why he came to Israel and what you guys did together.
So it's interesting. My relationship with Mariano actually started about a year and a half ago when I took part in a meeting at an office in downtown Manhattan, helping him map out a trip to Israel. That relationship went further, and he actually hosted me and together with my son at his home in upstate New York, and a relationship developed, and his dream was to come on a private, family, very spiritual journey to Israel, and that's what he's been doing. That first day, we did a little bit of a press event at the Tower of David Museum in Jerusalem, and that's where you see the pictures where I was greeting him there as well. We gave him a few welcoming gifts, and then since then, it's really been a very private, and this is a trip that he's been dreaming of for years as a very deep believing Christian, and we're very thankful that he was able to have that opportunity.
And how important is it from a diplomacy standard to have an athlete of that renown, that well-known, to come to Israel and go on a trip? I mean, everyone knows he's here on the whole world, especially a lot of those Yankee fans. How important is that for just general hasbara?
It's very important, but particularly if we do the right thing with it, meaning there's a lot of stars, a lot of well-known people who come to Israel and experience the greatness of Israel. And then the challenge, I think, from our perspective is to make sure that we help get the word out. There's no doubt that them coming here makes a difference. They'll tell people that they know, and they'll share good words about Israel. But I think there's a lot more that we can do to finesse these visits into little sound bites that I believe can make a very big difference around the world. If we did, for example, at the end of every single week, just gathered in 1 2-minute clip the various people who everyone in America knows who've been through Israel and had a positive experience and got them to say a word or two about that, I believe that would go a long way towards combating a lot of the anti-Israel sentiment around the world.
Again, we're speaking with Dov Lipman here on the Ari Lewis Show, and we got to know, what is Mariano like personally? This is a guy that had such influence over the baseball world, millions of people riding on his pitches at the end of games, and my understanding, he seems like a very humble guy. You got to meet him personally. What's he like in real life?
I have to tell you, I've met many athletes, many high-profile athletes, and many really good people. I don't think I've ever met someone so humble, so unassuming, so willing to attribute everything that he has to God and nothing to himself, so family-oriented and so fervently religious. Just a pleasure to be around a person who is so nice to anybody who approaches him. Very private. He doesn't like the limelight. He doesn't want to be out there so much. But when he is, he's so sweet and nice to people and so unassuming.
Now, you're originally from Silver Spring, Maryland. Did you give him any flack, because Baltimore Orioles fan, if that is what you are, and he's a Yankee legend? Did baseball at all come up in your conversations?
I have to be honest with you, I am an Orioles fan, but first of all, Mariano transcends team, that's first of all. And we did talk baseball a little bit. He talked a little bit about his experiences playing in Baltimore, and I commented that I usually found that there were more Yankee fans than Oriole fans in Camden Yards when the Yankees came to town. And but he also talks about as much as there are all of these rivalries, he sees past them, and he's friends with players on all teams and is approachable. Just the other day when we were at the Tower of David, a guy approached him with a Red Sox hat, and he signed it without a problem, and he's so above all of these types of issues.
Okay, but did you at least say, I understand why you're a religious person. After all, your whole career was based on one pitch, the cutter, and you made millions of dollars. You've got to believe in God if that's what happened, right?
Well, he actually describes how he wasn't such a major talent. He wasn't expected to really go anywhere. And he actually had Tommy John surgery at a very young age, and he came back from that, and he was unstoppable. And he says there's no way for him to explain this other than God.
That's true. He was almost traded to the Tigers. A lot of Yankee fans don't want to think about that, but it was very, very close, and he would have never won all those World Series for the Yankees. Again, we're speaking with Dov Lipman here on the Ari Lewis Show on Israel Sports and News Radio. And what's interesting about this connection, and part of the reason I want to have you on is because in addition to your work in politics and spirituality and religion, you wrote a book called Time Out: Sports Stories as a Game Plan for Spiritual Success. So this really ties in to what you're about. Tell us a bit about that book. I found that very interesting in researching for this interview.
So the book actually developed over the years. I'm an educator, and I was teaching in North American Jewish day schools at a high school level, and also when I moved to Israel to post-high school programs for mostly North Americans who came here, boys and girls. And I found that I used sports stories as a vehicle to teach all kinds of spiritual lessons. You know, sometimes, as much as we want to be learning the Talmud, a good, juicy sports story can teach the message even better. And I started thinking about it, and I realized I have a whole book full of stories, and I really wanted to find a way to share that with other educators and also with kids all around the world. So I actually put out a contest to my students, and I said, come to me with your stories, and I'll mention you in the book if you get your story makes the cut. And I was able to put together 30 different lessons from some well-known stories and some not-known stories. Actually, my story in there, which has Mariano, is actually a negative one on a certain level, in that I talk about that nothing is impossible in life and certainly in spirituality. And I talked about the Diamondbacks facing Mariano and facing elimination from the World Series in Game 7, and how they actually ended up winning it and doing what everyone described as impossible. I think one of the commentators before that inning started said it's like getting into a Volkswagen and trying to drive to the moon to try to score 2 runs off Mariano in this situation. And these are important messages for kids and adults actually to internalize, to recognize through our sports heroes and through the sports stories that we're all familiar with, lessons that we can actually apply to our spiritual lives as well. So the book is called Time Out. It's a game plan for spiritual success, and the sports stories for a game plan for spiritual success. It came out years ago, and parents all across the world were telling me this is the first book their children sat down and read cover to cover.
Wow, incredible. And by the way, as a Diamondbacks fan, warm memories of when Luis Gonzalez got the hit off Mariano. And you're right about people forgot, I think, how invincible he seemed up to that point. And I had Kurt Schilling on my program a few years ago when he gave up the home run to Soriano. Part of him thought that was it because he knew Mariano was going to come in and try to close the door. Very, very close, by the way. Now, another book you wrote, not a sports book, but you wrote To Unify a Nation, My Vision for the Future of Israel. You had Shimon Peres, Yair Lapid, Natan Sharansky in that. And speaking of Mr. Sharansky, he lives in the neighborhood where I live in, and he, at this point, I think is more of an idea than a person, just everything he's gone through, what he represents. What was it like to work with him and have him be in your book?
So for me, it's also been very special, my relationship with Natan Sharansky, because I remember as a kid growing up in suburban Washington, D.C., we would go and demonstrate at the Soviet embassy for his release from prison, and being reunited here in Jerusalem a few decades later is really nothing short of a dream and miraculous. And I've worked with him especially on issues related to diaspora Jewry and conversion, and also I traveled with him, also such a humble person, and I'd say so smart. I don't think anybody, and until you interact with him and spend time with him, the depth of thought and intelligence, really an incredible person, and like you said, a source of inspiration to see someone who suffered as much as he did for the ideal of Israel, and now to be contributing to Israel as he does, and as a tremendous inspiration.
Indeed. And again, this is the Ari Lewis Show here on Israel Sports News Radio, speaking with Dov Lipman here on the program. And let's talk also about your radio show. Again, I talk about you're the jack of all trades. You're on Voice of Israel, One Nation with Dov Lipman. Tell us what the program is about.
So as I left the Knesset and started thinking about what things I want to do in the meantime, and I say in the meantime because I do plan on running again, God willing, one of the things is Hasbara, getting good word out about Israel. And I have a 2-hour show every single week on Sunday. in Israel time from 3 to 5, 8 to 10 in the United States in the morning on voiceofisrael.com. And the show is called One Nation, and I try to bring on all kinds of people, both leaders in Israel, members of Knesset, ambassadors, other kinds of personalities, but also people in Israel who are making a real difference. Just trying to get the word out about what's actually happening in Israel, some of the great stories and some of the stories of triumph as well. So trying to every single week bring that kind of positive message and give people a real sense of the truth behind what's actually happening in Israel. And thank God the feedback so far has been great.
And also talk about your do political correspondent work for I-24 News, and Michael Freeman is the sports guy over there, so good friends with them. I know I-24 is doing great work. Talk about what you do for them.
So I started to work for I-24 News as a political correspondent, and whenever there's anything of interest in the Knesset that happens, I'll be there, usually on their primetime evening news show. And I also now have every single Monday at 8:45 a special segment dealing with the United States presidential elections, where I appear and give some analysis there as well. And again, the idea is to try to continue sharing my perspective about not just what's happening in Israel, but on events that are happening all around the world, and all somehow at a certain point connect back to Israel as well. So I'm very happy to be part of the I-24 team at this time.
All right, and a few minutes we have left with you. Going back to sports, I got to know if you still follow the Orioles, and they had a great year last year. I want to know some of your predictions of who will go to the World Series this season.
Okay, so first of all, I am an Orioles fan. I have to admit that my son is a Nationals fan, having been a kid in Washington before we made Aliyah. I'm a Nationals fan. I grew up without the Nationals. From what I can tell, the combination of the pitching staff and some of the power that you're starting to see, and the coming out party for Brian Harper, I think you will see the Nationals in the World Series. I'm a big Orioles fan, always have been. I grew up with Cal Ripken and experienced the '83 World Series victory, and haven't been able to taste that since. I don't think this will be the year quite yet. I'm impressed with how they're doing, and Manny Machado has certainly come back from his injury very strong. I don't know at this point who's going to come out of the American League. It's really, really packed in terms of all the teams that I watch. I think the big surprise is the Yankees. I think everyone expected a real drop-off, and now all of a sudden they've come back with this rotation that's doing really well. And if they continue with that might be the surprise of the season in terms of making it far into the playoffs. I do expect the Orioles hopefully to make it to the playoffs, maybe a wild card. Unfortunately, I don't think they'll go too far, but I will be happy if I see the Nationals take it all as well.
Yeah, a lot of people thought the Yankees would drop after Jeter's retirement. Jeter's final hit, game-winning hit at Yankee Stadium, was against your Orioles, but it was on Rosh Hashanah, so I know you weren't watching it. I wasn't watching it. I found out later. But that was a pretty cool situation. Anyways, we appreciate.
I'll tell you that Mariano mentioned, without the fabulous four, or whatever they call them, the core four of the Yankees, that he also expected a drop-off, but he's still following and rooting and praying for their success as well. So it could be on the heels of his trip to Israel and the close connection he's had to God, maybe those prayers will actually mean something.
Yes, and did he? I'm sure he went to the Kotel, right? I didn't see pictures of that, but did he?
He did.
Okay, great.
He did. He wanted it without press. He wanted it to be a very private, spiritual, intense moment, and
okay.
He was there.
Well, that would make sense, and that's certainly a great thing. And we thank you for your time. And the reason why I introduced you as a Knesset member is because I know you'll be back in the Knesset where you belong. And I'm making that as a future prophetic thing, if you will. I'm not a prophet, but we all want you back. And to me, you're a Knesset member right now because of all the work you do. It's incredible. So thank you for the time. I know you're very, very busy, but it was good to chat some sports with you. And it was great meeting you a couple of days ago. And God bless you. All the best. We'll be in touch very soon.
Thank you so much. All the best.